Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I've got Mr. Jonathan Harris. Jonathan will be presenting his Four Aces workshop. Jonathan is an author, speaker, and life coach. He's a local author from the Fort Washington area, and he's the proud son of Joseph and Linda Harris. Hi, Jonathan.
Hey, how you doing this evening?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you doing?
Everything's been really good. I'm just happy to be here. I'm excited. It's been a really good day. So,
Good, good. Well,
yeah.
thanks so much for joining us. And I know we've been in touch a few times in the past, and you've
Yes.
actually helped the library out a great deal because we got to interview you for our new strategic plan that we have upcoming in the next few years. So thank you for that, and thanks
Of
for
course.
visiting us your whole life. Can you tell us a little bit about your about yourself and your previous experiences visiting Prince George's County libraries?
Sure. So, for those viewing and listening, thank you so much for tuning in. Again, my name is Jonathan Harris. I'm an author, I'm a speaker, I'm a life coach, I am a higher education professional. Today, I'm wearing my Maryland Pride shirt or Maryland Proud shirt because I've grown up in Prince George's County my entire life. I'm from Fort Washington, Maryland, and I've just been a huge fan of learning since I was a little kid. I can remember times where my grandfather would just take me out and we would just go explore nature and just different things like that. So I've always had a knack for wanting to learn more. And, I remember times even my mom taking me to the library to like pick out a book or just different things like that. So growing up, I've always had a love for learning. And even as I got older and I stepped into becoming an entrepreneur, the library was just a great place for me to be able to get things done. My top three, I'm so sad they're kind of closed right now, but the Surratt's location in Clinton is my number one. The Spalding Library, which is kind of like the Iverson Mall, Temple Hills area, is my second favorite, and Oxon Hill Library is my third. So generally, when things were kind of going functionally before COVID, that's where you would find me if I'm at home getting things done in the library. So fun fact for y'all who've never been before, you can actually learn a foreign language for free there. The library has all of these different programs that you can use. So if you've ever been interested in picking up a new language, you can do that. I actually started using their software last year to learn a little bit of Chinese, and I plan to like recontinue those lessons really soon.
Oh, nice. Yep,
Yes.
we've got two language learning softwares. We've got Mango Languages and Transparent Languages. Both of them free. All of our online resources are free, and any resident of Maryland can apply for a virtual library card and get access to all of our online resources, which is wonderful. So thanks, Jonathan, for the quick plug on our online resources. I'm glad you found them beneficial. But yeah, thanks so much for coming on. And Jonathan's got some great information to share with you all for today. So I'm going to ask him a couple questions just to kind of give you all a little bit of a background to Jonathan, and then he's going to kind of get going. So we know you're an author, but the big question: why? Not how,
Ooh.
but why?
Wow. If I could sum it up in one word, I would say impact. There's a relatively longer story, which I won't get into. If you read Master of Ceremonies, A Male's Guide for a Successful Life, which is my first book, you'll learn what kind of really fueled it. But what I'll say is it was put into my spirit to come up with a book originally for guys because just growing up, I knew how influential my dad, grandfather, brother, uncles, and just the different men in my life were to me. But I also recognize not only through my job, but just some of the friends I had growing up, how many young men don't have an active male or an active father in their life. And I kind of had this thought, well, what if you could create a resource guide for young men? I acknowledge that a book will never take the place of someone's father, but I do acknowledge that there are just different general things that you could answer if you put in a resource guide for someone. So, for example, how to write a check, how to tie a tie, how to make a budget, and just those kind of different life skill things. So that was really the focus behind creating the first book was impact. Similarly with the second and third book, Growing Gents and Girls with Pearls, it was to really give parents support. Growing Gents and Girls with Pearls focuses on a younger audience, so toddlers, babies, things like that. And it's a way to help parents work with their children with different value systems, like being on time, if not being early, having manners, having patience, using their words versus their fist, and things like that. So with anything I do, I always aspire to leave a legacy and just have a strong impact with those around me.
Awesome. And we do have one copy of Master of Ceremonies available in the system. So I'm going to share out that link so that hopefully by the end of your presentation, that book will be placed on hold and somebody will be coming to our libraries to pick it up for curbside service. So thanks so much, Jonathan. Can you also talk a little bit about your career? Because I know you work at a college, and you, like you said, you're a mentor for the youth. So why and how did you get into that position, and why is it so important to be a positive role model in young people's lives right now?
That's a really good question. So, as Steve mentioned, I work in higher education. Specifically, I work at Lincoln University in Pennsylvania. I actually will be coming up on 8 years in October. It's crazy because it seems like I just kind of got there yesterday. But for me, I was an RA when I was in school, and I can tell you, being a resident assistant was probably one of the most life-changing experiences I had. Fun fact for you, I didn't start working until I was 19 years old. So I'd done a lot of volunteering as a kid, but I had never been paid for any of the work I'd done. I've just always been a person who liked to help out. So for me, money wasn't exactly important. I've always been one who valued experience and skill sets because I understand from that you can acquire money. So because I did a lot of volunteering, I got hired as an RA when I was in college, and that was my first taste into real leadership, where I was responsible for about 30 to 35 college freshmen, making sure that they were just, really connected and comfortable with their college experience. And then, senior year came and I was like, I really like this. Like, I enjoy this element of helping people. And more importantly, it felt natural. It didn't feel forced, didn't feel like something I had to kind of force myself to get up and do. It was just like I got paid to do it, but it didn't even feel like it. I said I could definitely see myself making a career out of this line of work, like helping students and things like that. So I made the decision to go into higher ed professionally. So up here at Lincoln University, I wear a couple different hats. I work in the residence life office, where I oversee 2 residence halls of freshman male. So you can imagine what life is like running a building of 17-year-old guys and all the stories and adventures that come from that. That might be a future book. Outside of that, I'm an academic advisor. So, in the K through 12 system, you call them guidance counselors. In the world of college, you call them academic advisors. So making sure that my students are taking the right classes, making sure that they actually like the classes. Some of them don't know what they want to do with their life. And I remember being that person at times. So having those real conversations about career choices and options and, what that looks like for you. And then lastly, I run our campus Mel initiative, which we call Mel Achievement. And that's an office that specifically focuses on reaching out to guys. Studies do show that men traditionally have a harder time in school, not only just being there, but staying there. So we try to do strategic programs to get them to come out and learn about who they are and, what Lincoln has to offer and things like that. Last year, we actually won a national award from the American College Personnel Association for outstanding men's program for the country. So that was like a really huge honor to be able to receive that award, knowing that I had that initiative, and more importantly, that we are a small school, but we still beat out all of these other colleges for our outstanding work with our young men. So I'm hoping that I can continue that again this year.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
So it sounds like you've been the type of gentleman that's just kind of followed your heart and, had the trust that it would take you where it ought to take you. And you've kind of fallen into a role that's natural and that allows you to do what you want to do, what you feel like you need to do to impact people's lives. So that's really great. That's really great. So do you remember going back to your youth before you were an RA, before you were in college, some of your favorite teachers and how they may have encouraged you to follow your path, to follow your heart, to become what you wanted to be, which is a writer?
Goodness, yes. So ironically enough, 3 people kind of in my K through 12 experience really stand out to me as you asked that question. The first, my Spanish teacher, Miss Owens, Amazing woman. She was my Spanish teacher for 3 of the 4 years that I was in high school. And the thing that I loved about her is that she really held us to a standard. And I didn't realize, when you're younger, you don't realize that those who are the toughest on you are the ones who really do care the most. She expected nothing but the best from us. So if we didn't give great work, she gave it back to us and we had to resubmit it. If she knew that we weren't doing our best work, she pulled us aside. She always stayed on us. So, now just being older and having a professional career and even living in an entire different state, I think about all the things that she kind of instilled in us, and I'm so grateful to her. My second teacher was my social studies teacher. I just actually saw her in January because when I gave my TED Talk, she actually drove up to Pennsylvania to watch my TED Talk. So that's the power of PG County educators, y'all. But Miss Gaffney, one thing that I remember her telling me, I submitted an essay for something. It was for a scholarship, right? And I remember her saying, like, this is great information, but this is really boring. Like, you have to give people a reason to care. And I was like, well, dang, like, no one wants to hear that their writing is boring, right? But what it was is that was her way of letting me know that I was capable of better. So I went back and reworked it and I resubmitted it to her. And she said, this is great. And I ended up getting that scholarship because of her. So I'm extremely grateful for her just being honest enough with me to make sure that I could be better. And I always think about that when I'm writing. I always think about that conversation with her and how, it's not enough to just write something. It's about writing something that people will really have a sense of connection to. Because let's be honest, books come out every day. Dozens of books come out every day. What causes a person to want to kind of pick up yours versus what's next to yours and the ones around the corner and things like that? So that. And then my third influencer, Miss Sharon White, she's like my second mother, has been since I was 16 years old. And the one thing that she has really helped me really keep in mind is the importance of doing everything in excellence, as you've heard me say before. But one thing she really helps me learn is sometimes how to have balance in the different things that you're trying to do. I know with the life that I live, I have a lot of different interests in a lot of different areas. And her thing is sometimes you got to make sure that step A is really good before you move on to step B. So even though I am much older now, I still replay that in my head before I get ready to take on a new project. I'm like, what would Mrs. White say to me about everything else I'm already doing before I go reach out to this person about these next things? So it's funny that, again, conversations that people had with me at 14, 15, 16 years old have still kind of been ingrained in how I even make decisions now being 30. So shout out to those ladies. I love you all.
Miss Owens, Miss Gaffney, and Miss White. Did I get them all?
Yes, that's my friendly high school dream team.
Okay.
All of the teachers I had were great, but just, answering your question, I would say those three in the different conversations we had have definitely kind of planted the seed for the person that I am today now.
Absolutely. And teaching is a strange profession because it's somewhat of a thankless job from time to time because you don't really see the product of what that child becomes. So it was always great. I spent 10 years in public schools, and it was always great to see the students come back or to visit them while they were in high school. So I'm sure if Miss Owens, Gaffney, or Miss White is watching, they are just absolutely thrilled that you still kind of visualize them as your life mentors and role models that have, like you said, instilled that level of excellence and given you the high standards that you've kind of internalized for yourself. That's amazing. The power of public education.
Yes.
Great. Well, we're going to, if it's okay with you, Jonathan, we're going to go ahead and get started with your presentation, and you can talk about the writing process and kind of what it takes to start and to, keep your book relevant, like you said, even if it's 5 years old.
Yes. So, all right. So again, good evening, everyone. For those of you who are just tuning in, my name is Jonathan C. Harris. I am an author, speaker, life coach, higher education professional, sometimes avid video game player too. But tonight's presentation is called 4 ACES. And in this case, 4 ACES is an acronym. So I'm going to go over with you what each of the letters stand for and why it's important to your process. Now, keep in mind that, again, this is not only just for people who already have books out. out, this also works well for aspiring writers. A lot of times in my journey as an author, I come across a lot of people who have considered writing a book. And these are just things that I wish somebody had really sat down with me at the very beginning when I first said, I'm going to write a book, and made sure that not only did I understand them, but that I applied them and then mastered them. So we're going to go through that. We are also going to look at some examples. I have little screenshots and just different things like that so that you all can get a gist of it. So my main objective is that you will learn how to make people become more interested in you and become interested in your book. So first, let's start with some common reasons that your book fizzles out with time. One of the big things is that there is no long-term planning that happens. I think the most exciting part in any author's journey is when the book first comes out. That's when mom, dad, auntie, grandma, and all of them are really going to gather around you and buy those copies and all of that. But then you'll notice that life happens, right? So now at this point, your book is 1 month old, then it's 3 months old, then 6 months old. Now your book is 10 years old. What makes a person 10 years later still want to buy that product that puts out? Even just, as an example, think about the music world, right? So there are some songs that are timeless classics, like Michael Jackson Thriller. Even though that song came out so many years ago, you could hear it in a convenience store or an elevator or some space, and it'll give you the same feeling as though it just came out. Whereas there are other songs that came out that same year that we don't talk about at all. And there's a reason and a difference between why some went on to be known as timeless classics and are still paying heavy royalties and dividends, and others are just a part of your collection that you talk to your grandkids about, like, hey, y'all, I wrote a book 30 years ago. That second thing is that little to no marketing. That's huge. No one's going to tell your story better than you ever will. So it's important that you always have a strong marketing plan. Poor finances definitely plays a role. One of the biggest learning curves I had is that your book is your business. So you have to be able to fund different things that you want to do, whether that's ordering more books or investing in certain things like a website or just different packaged materials. So making sure that your finances is together is important, or you may end up cutting yourself short in the book world. And outside of that, you talk with little to no excitement about your book. Like, your book is your baby. I can honestly say that I have about 2,000 friends on Facebook, 3,000 followers on Instagram, and I could honestly convince you, and I will put my check on this, that 95% of the people that follow me or are friends with me know that I am an author, to the extent that there are people I have not seen literally since high school, and I could run into them at a 7-Eleven, and their first question to me is, how are the books doing? That lets me know that there is a connection, and you have kind of synchronized me with being an author, which is great, because then you're more likely to purchase the book. If a person sees me and they're like, oh, I didn't know you had a book out, we might have a branding issue there. So always making sure that when you talk about your book, you are talking about them as though they are your pride and joy, because they truly are. So here's the big thing that I didn't realize, and I kind of learned it along the way. Again, like I said before, when you are becoming an author, you are not just becoming an author as a person who just wrote a book. You are becoming a businessman. So here are 10 jobs. I'm not going to read all of them, but you have so many other things that you also are responsible for to even make that book see the light of day in terms of your followers and things like that. So most of my day is being social media manager. When I am getting these opportunities, I'm also playing the role of graphic designer to even let you know that I have an appearance with PGC MLS. They did the first flyer. I made a second flyer as well, just to kind of have two circulating, making sure these things get on your website. And even, like, I laugh, but stylists, you got to do your own hair. You got to pick out what you're going to wear and get everything ready and stuff. So I always laugh, because when you go to the Grammys and someone wins an award and they have this laundry list of people that they need to thank. Before I wrote a book, I didn't understand it. But then when I became an author and I had to take over all of these jobs, I definitely understand why people hire help, and I understand why people have such large teams. So one of the big things that you have to remember on this journey is, again, it's not just about writing the book and telling your story. It is a huge business commitment that you are also making when you do this. So this is just an example of opportunities secured. So as you can see, I've been blessed throughout the journey as an author. Ironically, as you saw before, I'll go back really quick. You see one of the things says contract writer and marketing specialist. So everything that essentially I have received, I also had to work to acquire it. Now, I know some people hire agents and have staffs and different things like that where they join marketing firms. But right now, where I'm at, I've just wanted to take on the task myself so that I can learn all of these different skills. So from, finding out about PG County 40 Under 40 Award, TEDx, which I was actually invited to apply, becoming a brand ambassador, radio show host. These are all things that essentially I had to work to acquire. So I do know that these methods work because, as you can see, I've been featured in 3 magazines, I've been in a commercial, and I have a feature profile on TIAA, which is a financial company. So again, these are either people that I've had to reach out to and get these contracts secured, or these are people who've reached out to me, and just having the business acumen to kind of work through that to secure these partnerships. I would say my most recent thing that I am proud of, considering Master of Ceremonies, which is my first book, I'm going to show it to y'all real quick. So Master of Ceremonies is actually 4.5 years old. I published this March of 2016. Barnes and Noble in Fairfax, Virginia is now officially selling my book in the store, which is a huge honor to me because, as you know, bookshelf space is very limited. I know Steve can speak to that. There are millions of books in the world, so there's no guarantee, or pretty much there's no thing that requires a store or a library to carry your book. They can put things on their online catalog all day, but to physically have it in a store is a really huge honor to me. And again, that was a partnership that I secured on my own. So I want to kind of, as we go through this presentation, talk to you about the art of having those conversations and the art of still making people even want to care, because Master of Ceremonies came out in 2016, as I shared, but the partnership to get it in Barnes and Nobles came as of June 2020. So again, still being able to push your product regardless of how old it is extremely crucial. Okay, so now actually getting into the 4 ACEs, you've kind of gotten the introduction, but the first one is A for assess, C for connect, E for expand, and S for storytelling. And we're going to go through each one for a little bit and talk about where, as an author or aspiring writer, you can use your skill sets and your gifts to kind of make your book pop even more. So let's start with the ACE of diamonds, which we're going to label assess. So when you think about like the word diamond, they kind of have that gem piece to it, like that thing of high value. Assessing yourself is probably the best thing that you can do to move forward. Here are 4 quick areas that you can assess. You can always go back and study your website, your social media, your email or phone pitch, and then your presentation. So even now, as I'm talking to you, my thing I'm going to be doing later on tonight is go back, kind of rewatch this, figure out maybe what I need to give more emphasis on, maybe what I need to shorten the time I speak on in other areas, and just things like that. I'll look, am I talking too fast? Am I not talking fast enough? Do I not look excited? Am I using my hands too much? Those are all things that you can assess, because your goal is, after today, you want to continue to secure more partnerships. So always be assessing. Assessing is self-reflection. So these are things that you are doing yourself. And it's okay to ask people as well, people really close to you. Something, I was watching this webinar, somebody said something really cool, but they said, if you want to know how much you're worth, ask people who don't know you to go to your website and say, based on my website, how much would you pay to bring me in to talk? And I was like, wow, that's a really, really interesting way to kind of study what your worth is based on the information that you already have out there. So with that being said, assessing your pitch. This is something that I really had to work through. So when I first started, the way that I pitched looked completely different. And what a pitch is essentially the information that you're putting out there to maybe an agency or an organization to get some type of opportunity. The biggest thing that most people do wrong is they start out talking about themselves, and instead, my mom always tells me this, make it about the other person, right? So shout out to Mom if you are watching. But what problem are you solving for them? Them is the entity, the organization, the industry that you're trying to get into. So what are some common problems that organizations have? We'll focus on, for now, a school. Most schools, public schools specifically, are trying to raise more money. They are trying to work with their student engagement, so they want more students to join after school clubs and, be more involved in class discussions and things like that, and behavior. Some populations have a higher fight population and just different kind of issues that they have going on in the school. So when you are working with a principal wants to know how you can help us crack down on maybe the number of fights. Like if you're going to come in and talk to my kids, when you're done talking to my students, is this going to result in them wanting to now go sign up for club soccer? Is this going to result in them wanting to, go get tutoring because they've been too prideful to get help with math before? Or again, what issues is that school going through, and where do you fit into the school issues? That leads to my second point, which is your solutions are greater than your credentials. One thing that really helped me, but also hurt me, is that I kind of came into being an author with, certain accolades already. So when I first started out being from Fort Washington, it was natural for me to only want to reach out to, or I'll say start by reaching out to my own schools and different places that I went and different places that I was a part of. So, I would reach out to high schools, let's say in Prince George's County, and I would lead with the discussion that I was my high school valedictorian. So fun fact for y'all, I was the friendly high school valedictorian. So I remember starting my emails out that way. And I thought like, oh, that's so impressive. I have this book out at the time. I'm 25, 26 years old. I'm a high school valedictorian and I'm looking to do some work in my home community. Why would people not want to, bring me in? But guess what? As many emails as I sent, several of them got ignored. And I'm like, well, I'm confused now. Like I'm thinking to myself, like, if I was getting an email, I would love to meet them. But, what I had to remember is that people get anywhere between 30 to 100 emails per day, depending on what they do. So you have to take a step out of your own body and ask yourself what makes them want to answer your email and reply to it compared to the other 100 that they're getting from their supervisors, from parents, from other people like yourself who want to come in and speak to the school. And I had to take the step back and say, you know what? I'm not going to lead our discussions with Jonathan's credentials. I'm going to lead our discussions with your challenges, and I'm going to show how Jonathan can get your problem solved. So being more solution focused, in a way that you can do that, all schools and organizations and industries have some form of a mission statement. So I would encourage you to go look at their mission statement. I would encourage you to go look at their core values and, just those types of things so that you can kind of better figure out where you fit into their picture. This one is kind of funny, but this was also a part of my bad pitching approach. So generally speaking, because I do work a full-time job, I do a lot of my kind of prep work at night after my work day is done. So I remember there were times I was emailing people at all times of early morning and late night. And I had to remember, Beyonce is not emailing people at 3 a.m. to discuss business. And I say that to say that the way that you present, the daughter Vanessa had brought home a boyfriend, and they said, well, tell me what your favorite food is. The boyfriend's favorite food was a steak. And he said, well, how would you feel if I took that steak and I put it on a trash can lid and served it to you? And the boyfriend said, I wouldn't really like that. And he said, why? And he said, because it's on a trash can lid. And that was the moment that I realized, and even they said it on the show, it's all in the presentation. So again, I'm reaching out to you at 3 a.m. Nothing about that screams established professional who would be good to that. That, in my opinion, which I was at the time, was an amateur. So for me, I keep all of my correspondence during business hours. The only time I might respond to you late is if we are already within a discussion thread. So like, Steve and I have been emailing back and forth. He and I already have an established relationship. But if I'm just meeting you for the first time, I'm not emailing you Saturday at 2 a.m. Because when you get that email, you're like, who is this guy emailing me at 2 a.m? So that's just all a part of assessing how you can go about things better. And then lastly, please, 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 I beg you, as you can see, got the hands together because I am begging you, please stay away from copy and paste emails. They are extremely impersonal. Everyone knows a copy and paste email when they see it. I do my best to put the name of the organization and even a little bit about what I studied in every single email. And yes, what I'm saying does take more time, but it is so much more personal. People care and they see that you did the research. They are way more likely to write you back. So here is a picture of confused SpongeBob. And behind Confused SpongeBob is an old email that I sent. It does have a lot of specific email information in it, so I'm not going to show the entire email. But it was an email that I sent back in the day, 2017. So it was like a year after the first book, Master of Ceremonies, came out. And I remember thinking, again, I'm talking about the valedictorian thing in the first line, and I'm thinking I'm sending this wonderful email. And I'm sending this out to many people, again, that magical copy and paste, all the things I was doing before, sending them them at late hours and all of that stuff, and I'm not getting any responses. Then I realized that that approach does not work. So now I've switched to shorter headlines, more captivating things, and I've even been adding pictures. So just to give y'all a sneak peek for those who are listening and tuning into this, I will not be leaving 2020 as a 3-time published author. I will be leaving 2020 as a 4-time published author. So there is another book on the way. And for those of you who follow me on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, I've been on a health journey for a last year. So yes, my 4th book will be about the weight loss journey. And with that, when it drops, I'm going to have, different people that I reach out to, specifically different human resources offices, and see if I can meet with their employees and do workshops around that work-life balance piece. Because again, as an author, as a higher education professional, and even working on other projects, work-life balance can be a little bit crazy for all of us. So now here's a sample pitch that I've been sending out as I've been setting things up. So you actually see the before and after picture of what I used to look like back in 2019 versus me in 2020, and with the either subject line or the sentence of "I promise to help your students and employees reach their health goals." So do you see how this shorter thing coupled with the picture is more likely to get them to want to call me back? Because I can sit here and email you this long thing about why I should come in and talk about work-life balance, so on and so forth, but this picture does the talking for me. I'm like, well, clearly whatever he did worked, because look at the before, look at the after. So now if they're like, yes, Mr. Harris or Jonathan, we are interested in bringing you in for that meeting, now I can give you the extended bio. Now I can give you the second, third, and fourth paragraph that I would have put in that long email. I'm now using the opportunity to get on the phone to kind of give you the expanded version. But what you have to remember is you need to get them to want to pick up the phone and talk with you in the first place. I was essentially, the way I used to pitch, I used to give you the whole phone conversation in the email. So there really was no reason for you to even need to call me. But these are just some things I want you to keep in mind about the importance of assessment. And then silver lining. So as you can see, this is a screenshot. I'm not going to read this. Be okay with rejection. That was something that I had to learn. As many people that I have had the pleasure of working with, there are probably 10 times the amount of people who have, again, not returned messages, who have said no thank you, and different things like that. So you are just always going to have to pitch, and you're going to have to be okay with being shot down. It is just a part of the world of business. But I want you to remember that rejection is an opportunity to learn. So the email that you see is a screenshot. I had reached out back in 2017 to a Barnes & Nobles in New York, and I was interested in coming to New York and doing it. And they said, at this time, we're going to decline the request. So generally speaking, I could have just been sad or said, okay, on to the next opportunity. But I said, I need to learn. Why is it that when Jonathan Harris emails you, it's a no thank you? Why is it when someone else emails you, it's let's set up a time and talk about this? There clearly has to be a difference, because you aren't rejecting everybody. You're only rejecting certain people. So I wrote the person back and I said, okay, well, thank you for responding. Would you mind telling me what I could have done better to maybe have gotten the opportunity? And they sent me this whole thing. So one of the subject lines says, like, what they call them community development business managers. That's their title. But basically what they're looking for, how soon in advance you need to pitch, what will help your pitch, right? So remember how I told you in June of 2020, I got Barnes & Nobles of Virginia to sell my book in the store? This is the email that I use, because Barnes & Nobles New York gave me free game and said, this is what you need to do to get our attention. So I just I pulled the email back up. And when I reached out again, I reached out to a different one, but I used everything that they told me would work. So again, if I hadn't taken it upon myself to ask the question, what did I do wrong? I would have never gotten this gem. I would have just gotten the no thank you email and just moved on with my life. So again, anytime you get rejected, continue to do research. Don't just take it at face value. Ask the question, what can I do better for the next time? All right, so the next one is connect, which is your ace of clubs. So when you think of the word club, I want you to think about like the club scene, the party scene, and different things like that. Connect is where you get to be the schmoozer and you get to connect with different people, kind of rub shoulders so that you have the opportunity to build your brand even further. So here are 4 ways that I do that. Social media groups, social media challenges, blog features, and family friend referrals. Please do not sleep the family and friend referrals. I can tell you one of my very first book signings was as a result of my father. My dad, believe it or not, is in his past life was a motivational speaker himself because his background was law enforcement. So he did a lot of youth intervention work during his days as a cop. So he still knows a lot of people who work in some of those industries. So he definitely called one of his friends and he's like, my son has a book out. And next thing you know, a week later, I had my first speaking engagements because of my dad. So I never sleep the fact that, you know, you might have family members who work in certain industries you're trying to get into or certain doors that maybe you're having trouble getting open. There might be somebody in your village who has the master key to that door. So definitely don't be afraid to connect. Here are some examples of what I want to show you. So to the left is my friend Jermaine. This is a kind of a screenshot from my blog, but every month I feature a person on my blog who's an entrepreneur. I understand myself as an entrepreneur, how hard it is to sometimes get yourself out there. So once a month, I allocate a blog article to people who are doing great things in the community and probably could just benefit from more exposure. The crazy part is Jermaine is like super popular already, but the cool part is I know there's even greater people out there who should really know what he does. So we kind of collaborated on that. And from that feature, when Jermaine was featured, I got probably 20 subscribers within a couple hours to my website. I got new followers and different things because we were able to put our connections together. So when you think of some of the most popular songs in songwriting history, they were features. It was so and so and so and so. So when you think about that song, Old Town Road, I think it was Little Nas X and Billy Cyrus. That was like hip hop meets country. And that song beat out so many different songs for the longest #1 hit on the billboards. But again, that's two networks coming together to make that happen. Now, the photo to your right is my vegan challenge. So my favorite R&B singer, Maya, did a 3-day vegan challenge. And as you saw before, I've been on a health journey. So I was just like, you know what? Let's try being vegan for 3 days. So from July 1st to July 3rd, I got to experience life as a vegan. It's definitely a lot of discipline, but every day we had to post our meals. So in the midst of doing that, you had to tag like the word vegan. So now I have vegan friends. And even though, no, I'm not a full-time vegan, but I've been able to get connected to an entire community that I was never a part of before and just get resources. Like I had people sending me meals and recipes and just all of these different things that I can consider for this vegan lifestyle. So September 1st through the 3rd, I'm getting back on this vegan challenge because I'm going to win this time. I was snubbed, but I will definitely be the vegan challenge winner for September 2020. You can bet on that. But I just say all that to say that by participating in that social media challenge, I've been able to just meet new communities. Even unfortunately, when Ahmaud Arbery got killed, his birthday was in May. So they did a 2.23 mile I Run with Maud challenge. And because I work out every day, I actually did that hashtag. So I've been able to connect with kind of a fitness community of people who also like to run and people who also like to walk. So just using your everyday interest to get connected is going to be really good for you. All right, so the next one is E, which is expand, and that is your ace of spades. So, you know, it depends on the card game, but in many card games, your ace of spade is a very popular card, even when you think about the game spades, right? Outside of the jokers, the ace of spade is one of the most powerful cards that you can have. And this is where you essentially take your author platform where you got started and you kind of cross over to other things. So a lot of times with celebrities, like using John Cena specifically, I'm a huge WWE fan, so I had to reference him. John Cena got his claim to fame as a wrestler, and then he stepped over into movies. Dwayne The Rock Johnson did the same thing. There are a lot of people who are singers, and then they go into acting or they go into these other areas. So I think if you got established as an author, that is a great way to kind of open the door to other things. And essentially, that's what I did. Prior to being an author, I was just a 9 to 5 kind of higher education professional. And, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. But once I became an entrepreneur, I said, if I'm building this platform up as an author, what are some other ways that I can step outside of the author box, but then use the author platform to get there? So for me, that's been blogs, YouTube, radio shows and podcasts, and just being a brand ambassador. Those are 4 ways, but obviously there are so many other ways that you can also do that. So Here are some examples for you. So speaking of radio shows, one of my kind of TV entertainment mentors who actually works at Lincoln like I do, his name is Mr. Box. He got me connected with a radio show because he runs our campus station. So when I was telling him about a book, he said, you know, it would be really good for you. You should get some experience like talking on radio, and it'll just really help you with your public speaking and comfortability. So I actually had my own radio show. It was called Thinking Out Loud. I did it for a couple months, and it was truly one of the best experiences of my life. I remember my very first episode, my guest ran late. So I had to like kind of fill content until this person showed up, even though my show was rooted around this person. So just really helped me think quickly on my feet. To the right, you'll see a photo of something called the Classic Black Man. And I was a part of a YouTube show. So for those of you who've ever watched The View or The Real, I did one season of a YouTube show called The Classic Black Man. So it was 5 black men from different just walks of life who talked about different issues going on in the black community. You know, topics like, do people raise their sons differently than their daughters? Or, you know, dealing with infidelity, dealing with the black wealth divide, and just these other things. So it was a really good experience, and that also helped me kind of expand the brand to say that, you know, being brought on a show because I was an author and because of my age demographic opened that door for me. So next up, you will see my blog logo to your left, the Classy Gent Chronicles, as Steve so nicely presented at the bottom of the screen earlier. I blog several times a month. And once you go to my website, you'll see a tab that says blog. If you click on that, you will see my blogs. And it just not only gives you life about who I am, but, you know, what I think, what I've experienced, so on and so forth. And like I said, once a month, I do feature entrepreneurs. So if you are ever interested in being featured, you can go over to the Work with Jonathan tab and go ahead and get signed up. Now, to the right, you will see a picture. And yes, I do have hair, but there was an entire life where I did not have hair. In fact, the first 28 years or 27 years of my life. But in that photo, you see a shirt that says Make Mama Proud. Now, I was a brand ambassador for a little while with a company called Nelly Bloom. And how that partnership worked out is one day on Instagram, they had liked my picture and commented on them. So I was like, you know, typical social media thing. If somebody likes your photo and you don't know who they are, you're going to go to their page and kind of expect and check them out. So I saw that they were a motivational clothing company. I was like, oh, that's so cool. And they had actually reached out to me about potentially being a brand ambassador. So I formally followed up with them via email, and I got the partnership. So, you know, for a good while, they sent me clothes, and I was able to go to different events and book signings and whatnot. And anytime I had book talks at schools, I always wore their shirts. And the kids were just so cool, like, oh my God, you're a brand ambassador, da da da. And I'm like, yeah, all because I wrote a book. You know, it has opened that door for me. So again, even though I'm an author and I plan to put out more books, I never try to put myself in a box. I'm always thinking of other ways to reinvent myself. That's how you keep your book relevant, and that's how you keep yourself relevant. All right, so lastly, we have the S, which is the storytelling. I think that's probably the part that I enjoy the most because I think it comes naturally. But your Ace of Hearts is you essentially capturing people's hearts, right? In order to get someone to want to support you, they have to feel a sense of care and connection to you. And if people don't feel connected to a product, they're not going to support it. So, as an aspiring writer or those who've even already published books, don't be afraid to talk about your process to getting there. People always laugh when they found out that I wrote part of my book in the back of my car. They're like, what? So then they want to know about that story. So then we have that conversation. They're like, oh, yeah, I definitely got to check this out. Da, 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 right? So here are four questions that you could ask yourself as to ways to tell your story. Was something interesting going on in your life during the creation of this book? Did you write this book while you were pregnant? Did you write this book from jail? Did you write this book while you were homeless? What was happening that people should probably really know about? Wildest book related story. I'm not going to get into it, but I could tell you the time that I got ghosted in Philly. I was supposed to be on this radio show, and essentially I got to the door of the station and like no one answered. And I'm like sitting in the rain looking crazy for this radio show appearance that never happened. So people always kind of get a kick out of that story. Third question: what did you learn while writing your book? I did a whole TED talk on it. That was my TEDx topic, which was how publishing pretty much impacts you. So definitely, I encourage you all to check out my TED Talk when you get a chance. And lastly, what are some behind the scene moments about your book? So I could tell you the story of how I had this thing I wanted to put in my book, right? And I'm going to try to find it while I'm talking to y'all. So I'm going to look through my book and not break eye contact too much. But basically, I had this concept I wanted to include. And I remember reaching out to the person, could I get permission to include? It was like a really cool diagram on something. And the person did not give me permission. So I was like heartbroken because I was like, oh, this has to be a part of the book, right? So I said, there's nothing illegal about making your own adaptation. So I essentially had to recreate it myself and just put my own little twist on it. So this is the image on page 52. I'm going to try my best to hold it up. So this is one of my best friends, Vincent, from high school. I've known him since I was 14. We're still good friends to this day. But this is a part of my traveling paragraph. There's a whole paragraph, or I'm sorry, an entire chapter on traveling out of town by yourself. So it is a picture of him in a suitcase, and it talks about things to essentially take to an airport if you're going out of town, right? So I say all that to say that we shot that in Silver Spring, Maryland, in the dead of November, the day after Thanksgiving. Like, my other best friend is set up with a camera and all of this stuff. So people always get a kick out of that behind the scenes stories of how, like, my friend actually ended up being a model in my book, and we were able to recreate that concept. So again, people love a good story. And speaking of a good story, here is a quick pop quiz for you. What do these two images have in common? So the left image is a picture that I took. I'm kind of upset with myself that the biscuits are upside down, but these are Red Lobster Cheddar Bay biscuits. The right photo is my third book, Girls with Pearls. Now you're kind of sitting here like, what do Red Lobster biscuits have to do with a book, right? All right, so let me tell you. So this is Girls with Pearls, my third book. And long story short, after I came up with the concept for Growing Gents, which is my second book, people were kind of like, I really want you to make something for girls. So I was like, all right, I got y'all. The first two book concepts were geared towards boys. You have my word. This next thing will be for girls. So I'm sitting in Red Lobster with a friend, and I'm like, all right, I'm the type of person that when I have an idea, like, I have to work on it before I lose it. So I'm like, I pulled out the notes on my phone. I'm like, I'm going to sit here and work on the book. In hindsight, it's extremely rude because you should not work on books while you are out with friends. But luckily, my friends know how I work, and they completely understood. So my friend is helping me come up with concepts, right? So our waitress comes over to the table. Her name is Monica. And I'm sitting here and I'm working on this book. And I'm like, hey, Monica, let me ask you a question. So by the time your daughter turns 18 years old, what life lessons would you want her to know? And she just gives me this look like, that's such an odd question to ask somebody. Like, why don't you just go order your food? But anyway, so she really thinks about it. And she's like, I would want my 18-year-old daughter, by the time she grows up, to learn to love herself, to value her education, and to not feel less of herself if she doesn't have a man in her life. So I was like, okay, those are really good points. And I had a couple ideas in my head too, but much to my surprise, she loved the question so much that she went around to the table. In fact, she went around to all the tables at Red Lobster and asked every single woman in the restaurant the same question that I asked her. And again, that question was, what are some things that you would want your 18-year-old daughter to learn by the time she turned 18? Like, what would you want her to learn as a child? So she comes back. This is Monica comes back to the table, right? And she has this paper, and this paper is all of these notes and pieces of advice. And much to my surprise, again, this is every single woman in Red Lobster wrote down a piece of advice. The waitress put it on a sheet of paper for me and gave it to me. So essentially, the women of Red Lobster helped me write my third book with their motivation and concepts. So people always get a kick out of that. Like, wow, you're sitting in a restaurant, all these women that don't even know you come together and help you write this book. So for all the ladies of Red Lobster, thank you, thank you, thank you. I love you so much. So fun fact for you about how book 3 came together. But as you can see, that is the art of storytelling. People have a different connection to this book because they understand its origins, that I wrote Girls with Pearls in Red Lobster off of Branch Avenue in, I guess, what do you call that? That's like Temple Hills, kind of Clinton area. But so again, you always want to tell those interesting stories.
That's the definition of crowdsourcing. Sorry, Jonathan.
Yes, you're fine.
That's the best. That's the best possible definition of crowdsourcing that I've ever
Yes,
heard.
the ladies of Red Lobster. So my plan is I haven't been back to Red Lobster recently, with COVID going on, but I'm gonna try to get in touch with their manager, and I don't know if the lady still works there, but I'm gonna ship her a book and tell her thank you, thank you, thank you. So what I did, I actually wrote down her information so that I could go back and find her, because I did this back in 2017. But even though the book came out in 2020, I want to follow up and be like, thank you so much, because if it wasn't for you, there might not have been a girls book. It might have just been Growing Gents by itself. But in conclusion, so just to recap everything we talked about, you want to always assess yourself to determine where you want to go. You want to connect with people, and again, find those creative and collaborative ways to work together. You want to expand your brand through just different ways that you can come up with in order to really get yourself out there. And lastly, story. Please do not be afraid to talk about your story. So that is the essence of the 4 ACEs. Now, if you want to stay in touch with me, I would love to stay in touch with you. My Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and Snapchat is all Author John. My email is theauthorjohn@gmail.com. So if you ever want to collaborate, you have questions, you want to work together, or anything like that, definitely, please do not be afraid to reach out. I think on Instagram, I might be 2 or 3 followers away from 3,100. So if y'all want to help me out, especially on the gram, I would truly appreciate that. And lastly, just to always remind you that the 3 books are out. So again, Master of Ceremonies, Growing Gents, and Girls with Pearls are now available at authorjohn.com/books. So thank you all so much.
Awesome, Jonathan. Well, I think you covered it all. Thanks so much for your time. Thanks for your presentation, and thanks for being a beacon of light here in Prince George's County for us all. We sure appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Well, thanks for joining us today as Jonathan has presented his 4 ACEs. My quick takeaways, Jonathan presented his conclusion, but pretty much be honest with yourself. To be an effective author or professional, you have to be very honest with yourself. You have to be reflective. You have to be adaptable. And also to be a well-rounded and diverse individual with diverse interests. You can't really, if you're an author, you can't focus solely on writing, but you have to take those other interests in your life, as kind of Jonathan talked about, fitness, mentoring, and all kinds of things that he enjoys doing, which kind of bleeds into the things that he writes and the stories that he wants to tell. And lastly is to capture creativity when it hits, as exhibited in your Red Lobster story. So the mind works in a funny way. As soon as that creativity strikes, you've got to do your best to capture it somehow.
Yes. Thank you, Red Lobster, again.
All right. On that note, we're going to thank Red Lobster at the conclusion of our presentation. Thank you, Jonathan, and thank you for supporting our libraries, and thank you for supporting our youth.
Always. Thank you so much again for having me, and I'm looking forward to our next collaboration.
Yes, indeed. Yes, sir. Well, take care, Jonathan. Thanks for joining us, everybody.
Good night, y'all.